Good morning, Jeremy Forrest with Premier Pro Wash and Seal, back to give some more investing advice. This is something that I talk to my employees a lot about, is investing. We hire a lot of young people, so they have a huge opportunity, basically a huge advantage over older folks because they have something that older folks don't have. Older folks might have some money, more money, but the most important thing is time, and that's what young people have, is time on their side. And with time on their side, a little bit of money can grow into a large amount of money, as we all know. So this is something I educate our employees on constantly, so I hope this benefits you guys as well. I did a video recently talking about how to value a stock to see if it's worth purchasing at the time, but I got a lot of requests on, okay, that's great, but how do we pick stocks? Where do we begin? So, as I've alluded to in the past, if you look at the statistics, 88% of folks cannot beat the market over a 10-year period or more. The market, on average, returns roughly 11% per year. And if you know anything about the rule of 72, the rule of 72 just means how long will it take for your money to double. So if you're making 10% a year, that means, according to the rule of 72, your money will double every 7.2 years. I like to have a goal of at least every 5 years my money doubling. So how do I double my money every 5 years? Of course, I would like for it to double faster than that. But realistically, over a long period of time, 15% is my minimum that I'm shooting for. And that means I will double my money every 10 years twice. So every 5 years, my money will double. So where do we begin though? If 88% of mutual fund managers can't beat the market, and leaving only 12% for those who can, where do we put our money then? I am a strong advocate of putting your money in an index fund. And when I say index fund, that usually represents three types of funds. When you guys get on the news and you hear the news say that the market was down or the market was up today, they're generally referring to three different indexes. The S&P 500, the Dow, or the NASDAQ. And so when you look at this, the S&P 500 is a mixture of 500 small, medium, large companies. It's very diverse. It is by far the most diverse index. So this is where I would start if you're an individual investor and you don't want to have anything to do with individual stocks, which is perfectly fine. I would put your money in one of these three places. The S&P 500 is by far going to be the most diverse for you. The next one is the Dow, and that is 30 of the largest U.S. public companies here in the United States. So once again, the Dow just represents the 30 largest public U.S. companies. And then the NASDAQ is mostly comprised of small and technology companies like your Apples, your Microsofts, those type of companies that will make up your NASDAQ. You can't go wrong if you picked any of these three. Personally, I would pick the S&P 500 or the Dow. I love the Dow because that's your more established companies. They typically pay a dividend. The S&P 500 also pays a dividend. And then the NASDAQ, not so much, because again, you're dealing with a lot of smaller and technology companies, because those are mostly comprised of your growth stocks. I'm a huge dividend investor. I love dividends because I love cash flow. To me, cash flow, why is cash flow important? Because cash flow and dividends, if you're investing, let's say Tesla, for example, you're only making money if that stock goes up. And right now we're seeing the market's really shaky. Technology stocks, all stocks in general, are getting punished right now. And so if you own only growth stocks that pay no dividends, you're not getting paid any money. The only way you're making money is if the price of that stock increases. So with dividend and stocks, which is what I'm a strong advocate of, you get paid no matter what. So if the market is choppy, you're still getting paid. In fact, when the market goes down, if you're a long-term investor like myself and you understand the importance and the power of dividends, then times like this when the market is shooting down, instead of panicking, you realize when you're getting dividends that you're just buying more dividends because the price of the share of that stock is down. So it's allowing you to accumulate even more shares. So later on when the market picks back up, then your returns are going to be boosted even more. And that's the power of dividends. And in fact, when you go to a party, no one likes to talk about the old boring dividend stocks. Let's face it, they're not going to shoot up 200% in a year. But if you look at the long-term performance of dividend stocks, they actually outperform technology stocks. Because again, the power of dividends compounded over time, especially if you're reinvesting and if you're young, I highly encourage you to reinvest your dividends. That's where the wealth begins. So dividends, awesome. I love dividend stocks. But if you're just beginning and you don't want to take a risk and buy individual stocks, then definitely want to put your money in one of these 3 index funds. Mutual funds, the reason mutual funds don't outperform a simple index fund is an index fund has it does have a fee, but the fee to run an index is like 0.03% of whatever you have invested. A mutual fund manager, on the other hand, can charge you 5% of whatever you have invested. That's what kills you. So you'll see some mutual fund managers, they'll tout that they beat the market. And let's just keep the numbers simple. Let's say over the last 10 years, the market returned 10% over the last 10 years. And when I say 10%, I mean that annually. So let's say the market returned 10% and this mutual fund manager is saying, yeah, well, I beat it. I returned 12% over the last 10 years. So that's where a lot of people get fooled. They see this and they see this mutual fund manager is beating the market. And by the way, 2 percentage points may not sound like a lot, but it could literally be the difference in millions and millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars, that little small percentage point difference. So when you take a $10,000 investment and let's say it grows for the next 30 years at 20%, and you take that same $10,000 investment and it grows over the same period of time, but it only grows at 15%, that's going to be a substantial difference of net worth at the end of that. So just keep that in mind. The percentages matter. So if you got a mutual fund manager who's boasting that he returned 12% and the market only returned 10%, but he has 3% fees, which is very common. Once you take away those fees, that mutual fund manager only returned you 9% versus a market of 10%. So you have to make sure that if you're in mutual funds, you need to make sure that the fees are not killing you, because that's what gets most people. Now, okay, that's great. I want to test the water and I want to buy individual stocks. Where do I begin? I think that before you buy growth stocks that don't pay dividends, I'm not saying you're wrong if you do, because I certainly have some stocks that don't pay dividends. But I built my portfolio, my foundation off dividend stocks first, because cash flow means way more than net worth. If you're worth $2 million, but you're not making any money off that, it doesn't matter, right? But if you're worth $500,000 and you're getting paid $2,000 a month off dividends, that's going to carry more weight. You can argue about that all you want, but cash flow is always more important than net worth. So we want to buy individual stocks. Where do we begin? The first place that I would recommend anybody starting out, especially if you're young, you want to start your foundation with strong consumer staple stocks. There's different types of stocks. Consumer staples, think about those as It doesn't matter if you're in a pandemic. It doesn't matter if you're in war. You're still going to need bleach. You're still going to have diapers. You're still going to have food. People are still going to smoke cigarettes. People are still going to drink alcohol. You still have to buy soap. Good times are bad. So when you think of consumer staple stocks, those are the stocks that typically do very, very well during good times and bad. In fact, during bad times, they actually do better, because during those worst times, people will cling on to these, and they like, once again, that dividend payment. So I wrote down some examples of some consumer staple stocks. Altria, think like Marlboro cigarettes. And when you look at these consumer stocks, they typically hold a wide moat, M-O-A-T, moat. And that just means that they have a huge competitive advantage. And you always want to find stocks that have a huge moat. Take Altria, for example. They sell Marlboro cigarettes. Why is that a huge moat? Well, if you're a cigarette business, you may think that that's not a thriving business, but they pay a huge dividend. And if you look at the history of the stock market, tobacco industry is a game changer. It is definitely a wealth creator if you have patience and you understand the power of dividends. You can't buy Altria and expect that stock to shoot up 100% like a Tesla or an Apple or a Microsoft. But if you understand the power of dividends and you take those dividends and you reinvest them, this will produce you far more wealth than the majority of companies that are in the NASDAQ, just because of the power of dividends. So what makes Altria and Marlboro so special? Well, not only the dividends, but think about cigarette business in general. You can't just go out and start a cigarette business. There's way too many regulations. There's the FDA and all that is entailed with that. So they enjoy this huge moat, this competitive advantage, because again, it's very expensive. It's almost impossible for a new cigarette business to start. So when you're looking at companies, not only do you want to find preferably consumer staple stocks, but you want to find those that have a huge moat. And typically consumer staple stocks do have a huge moat in some way. Coca-Cola and Pepsi, two of the most dominant soda manufacturers, they have a huge moat. Procter & Gamble, Walgreens. It doesn't matter how bad the economy is doing, people still need their medicine. So if I were you and you're looking to buy individual stocks and you don't know where to start, and you're dead set on buying individual stocks, start right here in consumer staples. We're in a great time to buy. I know people are panicking. These type of stocks usually don't dip in price a lot because they're dependable. Investors know that they can rely on these stocks time after time. But the great thing about a sell-off in the market, people panic, people freak out. They don't understand the power of staying in the market for long periods of time. So that emotion gets to them. And so if you're a very patient and disciplined investor, I can sit for years before I buy a stock. Like, I might like Kraft, but I don't like the price it's at, but I love the company. It's just not at a price I'm willing to pay. I will sit in times like this for years and wait for an opportunity like this to load up on one of these stocks. So I encourage you to, first consider index funds. That's where the majority of people need to be. But if you want to give yourself a better chance, because I don't want to just be average, I want to have a chance of beating the market. And the only way you're going to do that is through individual stocks, preferably dividends. This is a great place to look. Just Google consumer staples. There's more than these right here, but this would be a great place to start hunting for good value in these type of stocks, because they're going to be there through good times and bad, and that's what you want. You want to get paid through good times and bad.